In the court of public opinion, the verdict is clear, and it's not in Donald Trump's favor. According to recent polling, 59% of Americans disapprove of how Trump is handling investigations tied to Jeffrey Epstein, while only 20% approve. Trump holds the dubious distinction of being the only U.S. president in history to have had a long-term, close friendship with a man who regularly raped children, almost daily, during the period they were closest. That man, Jeffrey Epstein, was a convicted sex offender and trafficker. In a recorded interview with journalist Michael Wolff, Epstein himself claimed, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. Now, every move Trump makes appears aimed at getting that 59% of Americans to look the other way, to forget his connection to Epstein and to avoid questions about what might be hidden in the Epstein files held by Trump's Justice Department. Those files contain the full investigative record on Epstein and his co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell. During his presidential campaign, Trump promised his supporters he would release them in full. His FBI director and attorney general at the time both publicly pledged to make the documents, including Epstein's so-called client list, public. The attorney general even claimed to have them on her desk. But in the end, an unsigned statement declared there was no client list, and not a single word from those files would be made public under Trump's Justice Department. The secrecy has only fueled public suspicion. Today, 71% of Americans believe Trump knew some or a lot about Epstein's crimes before any investigation began. Only 8% believe he knew nothing. Even among Republicans, 56% think Trump had prior knowledge. This is a serious political problem for Trump. His influence in the Republican Party has never come from fear among GOP lawmakers of him personally. They've long seen him as unqualified, volatile, and unfit for office. What they truly fear are Trump's voters. Since he secured the 2016 nomination, his base has been his sole source of political power. Without them, his candidacy in 2016 might have collapsed, especially after Fox News owner Rupert Murdoch publicly urged him to quit early in the race. But Murdoch, like the rest of the country, underestimated how strongly Republican voters would rally to Trump. Now, that bond with his base is showing cracks. The Epstein scandal and Epstein's own claim of a decade-long close friendship with Trump has turned over half of Republican voters skeptical. These voters may never again face Trump's name on a ballot, but their shifting views could shape how GOP leaders approach him in the future. Media outlets, including this program, have refused to ignore the connection between Epstein, Maxwell, and Trump. Reports have documented that Epstein's 50th birthday tribute book, compiled by Maxwell, included a letter signed by Trump. When the Wall Street Journal prepared to publish that story, Trump threatened to sue Rupert Murdoch and the paper. Murdoch, convinced of his reporter's evidence, published it anyway. Trump did file a lawsuit, but it's widely seen as a bluff. Pursuing it could allow Murdoch's lawyers to depose Trump under oath about what he knew of Epstein's crimes. 71% of Americans now believe Trump had knowledge of Epstein's abuse before investigations even began. In the history of the presidency, out of 45 men who have held the office, only one was friends with a man who openly described himself as that president's best friend for a decade, while committing horrific crimes against children. Facing this mounting pressure, Trump appears to be testing new distraction tactics. This week, he sent small numbers of National Guard troops, just a few hundred at a time, into U.S. cities, including Washington, D.C. As predicted, they've had no clear mission and little effect. The New York Times described one recent evening at the Washington Monument, a peaceful summer sunset with joggers, families, and tourists, alongside about a dozen Guard members and military vehicles, snapping selfies with visitors before leaving. 2 hours later, behind these deployments, the shadow of Epstein, Maxwell, and Trump's friendship still looms large. And as Congressman Jamie Raskin recently noted on social media, this is not a story that is going away.
Hey everybody. Asterisk, the nation knows what a real emergency in Washington. DC looks like January 6, 2021. That's when thousands of violent insurrectionists, incited by Donald Trump, stormed Congress endangered the vice president, and left. More than 140 officers injured. On that day, Trump did nothing. He didn't call on the National Guard. He simply sat and watched. What's happening in D.C. today is entirely different. The city is experiencing its lowest crime rate in 30 years. Yet Trump talks about crime out of control, citing graffiti and fear-mongering without acknowledging the actual statistics. If Trump genuinely cared about public safety in D.C., he would release the $1 billion he has withheld and direct Republicans to allow that money to go toward public safety. Law enforcement, public schools, and other community needs. This isn't a public safety emergency. It's a public relations problem. The real issue is that Trump is still hiding the Epstein files, despite campaigning on a promise to make them public. It's time to release those files and let the people of Washington, D.C. govern themselves.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, joined by other Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee, has sent a letter to Donald Trump's Attorney General and the Director of the Federal Bureau of Prisons, questioning the decision to transfer Trump's longtime associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, to what is described as one of the most comfortable prisons in the United States. The letter strongly suggests the move may have been intended, in Raskin's words, to shield the president. Raskin writes, 2 weeks ago, you inexplicably transferred Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, from a federal correctional institution to a far more comfortable minimum security prison camp in Texas. Just 3 years into her 20-year sentence for sexually exploiting and abusing girls as young as 14, the transfer followed private interviews between Ms. Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, arranged after intense public scrutiny over the Department of Justice's refusal to release the full Epstein files, despite President Donald Trump's earlier promise to do so. These actions raise substantial concerns that the administration may now be attempting to tamper with a crucial witness, conceal the president's relationship with convicted sex offenders, and pressure Ms. Maxwell into giving false or misleading testimony to protect the president. The letter accuses the Trump administration of taking a series of actions that appear to cover up the full scope of Trump's relationship with Epstein. It also notes that 71% of Americans believe Trump knew some or a lot about Epstein's crimes against children before any official investigation began. Raskin further points out that during Trump's first term, federal prosecutors charged Maxwell with perjury, demonstrating her willingness to lie under oath to avoid accountability. Regarding Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, whose previous role was serving as Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer, the letter states, his actions raise staggering concerns about political conflicts of interest, witness tampering, and suborning false testimony. Raskin highlights that less than a week after Blanche's meeting with Maxwell, she was transferred from the Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee, Florida, to the all-female minimum security prison camp in Bryan, Texas, known for housing white-collar offenders and celebrity inmates. The Bryan facility offers far greater freedom, as well as educational and social programs not available in higher security institutions like Tallahassee. The letter stresses that this move creates the appearance that the Trump administration is attempting to elicit favorable testimony or silence from Maxwell. Adding to the suspicion, the prison camp has a months-long waiting list for entry. Yet Maxwell appeared to bypass the entire review process, securing a spot in just days. Raskin even cites one of Maxwell and Epstein's victims, Virginia Giuffre, who has said, Ghislaine Maxwell is a monster. She's worse than Epstein. She did things even worse than he did. She was vicious. She was evil. On the final page, Raskin demands, the committee must have access to all documents and information regarding these actions to determine whether Department of Justice officials and the president have abused prosecutorial and law enforcement powers to shield the president and mislead the public.